Halliburton's got the ball. Halliburton rises up. And there's the whistle. Oh, my goodness. Tyrese Halliburton hits a three and is fouled.
You have got to be kidding me.
McConnell underneath the basket. Looking. Toppin in the corner for three.
Oh, yeah! Yeah! OB!
Pacers have it, a chance to tie.
Yeah, Nembhard
hits the three. Nembhard gives Indiana the lead.
Hello, Pacer fans, and welcome back to the Pacers Fever Show. I'm your host, Logan, and today we've got a huge episode lined up as we break down the Game 3 matchup between the Indiana Pacers and the Milwaukee Bucks. That's right, your Pacers are sitting on a commanding 2-0 series lead after two great performances at home, and now it's time to hit the road, and they hope to bring that energy into enemy territory at Pfizer Forum. The Bucks will be desperate to defend their home court, and the Pacers will look to steal Game 3. Can the Pacers keep the momentum going and put the Bucks on the brink of elimination, or will the Milwaukee Bucks punch back in front of their home crowd? We're breaking it all down right now on this episode, from key matchups to X factors and what the Pacers need to do to go up 3-0 in this series. Let's get into it. Number 4 seed Indiana Pacers, number 5 seed in Milwaukee Bucks, and Game 3 will take place on Friday, April 25th. Indiana at Milwaukee, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, ESPNU and NBA TV. If you don't have either of those, they are broadcasting this on FanDuel Sports Indiana. So if you are subscribed to that, you can get that channel where Chris Denary and Quinn Buckner will be on the call for that one. The Pacers will then have a Game 4 matchup against these Bucks in Milwaukee Sunday, April 27th, and that is going to be at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And it will be on TNT. So we finally get some national TV coverage again, and we're going to be on a channel that most will have. So that's nice of them to do that, to not ignore this series like it doesn't exist, even though it's one of the better rivalries in this first round. But that being said, we're going to get into the Game 3 preview, talk about what is going on in the series and how that's kind of shaken out and what has been the difference in this series so far. And then we're going to launch into the past, the present, the future, what might be happening with the Milwaukee Bucks and their rotations. We're going to talk a lot about the home court advantage for the Milwaukee Bucks and what it means for the Pacers to be on the road, how they did last year in the playoffs on the road, and just the keys to what could be a successful game for the Indiana Pacers and what they can do to try to eliminate anything that might be a problem or challenge coming up in Game 3. So a packed show. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of it and talk about the series so far. And so far, the difference has been the Indiana Pacers' depth versus a Bucks team that seems to be a very shallow and depth-challenged team. And again, this has been so important for the Pacers. They've talked about this all season, is their depth, their ability to be cohesive, because they did not move away from many of their players from last season. The only new addition really being in the rotations, Jarris Walker and Thomas Bryant. They're really the only two that come in to a Pacers rotation that's been together through the Eastern Conference final run that they had last postseason in 2024. And again, I think that really helps. It's a tremendous factor in what can be a challenging thing to do, is to go and play against a team that has one of the best players in the world and go up against them and take two and not even really bat an eye at the challenge in which they present, even in Game 2 when they cut it real close at the end of that game. But the Pacers end up closing that out. So the Pacers have done exactly what they need to do. They got home court advantage during the regular season, but that was not due to the fact that they were very good when they went to Pfizer Forum. And let's talk about that. The Pacers have not been very good when they've traveled, especially in last year's postseason. And then when they're playing playoff teams, typically on the road, it is a struggle. And this year they really struggled with the Bucks when they went on the road. They lost 2 games. So here are the stats in those 2 games. They played in Milwaukee on a second night of a back-to-back recently, and I think that is a game that it's really tough to kind of judge where the Pacers were as far as being on a second night of a back-to-back. And then first time they play them, I just feel like the Pacers were not playing well. You still had issues where Tyrese Halliburton was not playing at the level in which he's been playing for the last couple of months. Aaron Nesmith being injured, Nemhard not being as good as he once was. Pascal really Siakam. Did I say Pascal really Siakam? Maybe that's his new nickname. Pascal Siakam really carried this team through the first 25 games of this season. And I mean, you can even look at it pretty much every game leading up to the All-Star break. Pascal Siakam had such a huge role in what the Pacers did and the success that they found. It wasn't until Nesmith and Nemhard are both healthy and joined forces with the starting five once again that they really started to turn a corner. But that being said, let's get into those stats from those Pacers-Bucks games. So we're going to go on the Pacers side first. 118 points per game against the Bucks in those two games. 44 and a half field goals made, 93 and a half field goals attempted in the two games on average. Field goal percentage, 47%. From three, they made 14, attempted 38 and a half. They had a 36.4 3-point percentage. Free throws made, 15. Free throws attempted, 20. That free throw percentage would be 75. Offensive rebounds, 12. Defensive rebounds, 27. And the total rebounds being 39. Assist, 29 and a half. Turnovers, 14. Steals, 10. Blocks, 10. And they had a minus 9.5 for that plus minus category. They weren't good. They weren't good when they went to Pfizer Forum. It's a difficult place to play, especially when Giannis, Dame, and the cast of characters that they have around them are getting that energy from that home crowd. Let's go on the Bucks side. There's my kitty cat. She's helping with this. She wants to talk some Bucks basketball, I guess. They won 2 games at home against these Pacers, and in those 2 games, they averaged 127.5 points a game. Field goals made, 45.5. Field goals attempted, 84.5. 53.8% from the field. 3-point made, they made 16 and attempted 36.5. 3-point percentage, they had a 43.8 for 3-point percentage. That is massive. That is something that we'll talk about when we get into the keys of the game. Free throw made, 20.5. Free throws attempted, free throws made, 20.5. Free throws attempted, 23. And they shot 89% from the free throw stripe against the Pacers this season when at Pfizer Forum. Offensive rebounds, 8.5. Defensive rebounds, 36. That totals 44.5 rebounds. 30 assists. They had turnovers. They had 17.5. Steals, 9.5. Blocks, 4. And their plus minus, obviously, was a plus 9.5. That is not good for the Pacers if you're looking at that as far as the stats are concerned and you're comparing that to maybe what's coming up, what's down the road, is that the Pacers just don't play very well at Pfizer Forum. And this dates back to last season as well. They really struggle in that building. They've always really struggled in that building. The Bucks, I mean, especially ever since Giannis has been there, they are an extremely hard team to beat at home. You can see my kitty cat's tail. Hi, Hazel. Sorry. But yeah, they've just been a really tough team for Indiana to beat at Milwaukee. So that first game last postseason, if you remember correctly, the Pacers lose that 109-94, and they were trailing at halftime 69-42. The Pacers were getting the breaks beat off of them, and they ended up having a really great third quarter to get back into the game, but end up losing that game by 15. And that really launched, this struggle of winning games on the road in the playoffs. And I know that's extremely hard to do, but if you're looking to contend, which last year we were playing with house money, this year we're looking to contend for a title, get back to the Eastern Conference Final at least. And the Pacers just have to win home games. They've got to figure out ways to grind out these these away wins, not home. They do fine at home, but these away losses are just really tough. I mean, you can't really compete for a title or get back into the Eastern Conference Finals if you are trying or if you're having a hard time winning on the road. So let's go over some road numbers just in total from last season in the playoffs. So looking back at the playoffs last year, they played Milwaukee Bucks and then the New York Knicks and then Boston. With the Bucks, they did steal a game on the road which was very important. The only other road game they win is Game 7 in Madison Square Garden against a very beat up, limping in pretty much without every player that you could possibly have on the Knicks. They were just not ready for the Pacers. They didn't have the depth. They were beaten, battered, bruised, way more than the Bucks were. The Bucks were only missing Giannis last year and some of Dame, but really the Knicks got bitten by the injury bug last year, and pretty much by the time the series was over, the only healthy one was Josh Hart or DiVincenzo. So, and even they were kind of beaten, battered. So a lot of things went into the Pacers being successful at home, but they really struggled against even those teams that were, down a couple of people on the road. They played 9 games, obviously, because they did not have a top seed. They were a 6 seed last year, playing the number 3 seed Bucks, and then they had to go play the Knicks and then Boston. So a very tough stretch and very difficult places to play, by the way. I think that the Eastern Conference has a lot of places that are just fortresses to play in the playoffs, and it's really difficult anyway to win on the road in the NBA playoffs. So looking again at the road, they played 9 games, 2 wins, 7 losses. They had, in those losses, they averaged 112, so 112 points a game. Field goals made 44.1, field goals attempted 86.3. Field goal percentage on the road was actually really good last season in those games. It was a 51.1% field goal percentage. Remember, they were a really, really historic offensive team last season. They were so efficient. They really didn't miss shots. I mean, this team was just incredible. Like at every chance they get, there was a rare miss. It really felt like every time they shot at moments, they were going to make it. 3-pointers made 12.2. 3-pointers attempted 31.9. The 3-point percentage last year on the road was 38.3. Free throws made 11.6. Free throws attempted 16.4. Free throw percentage on the road was 70.3%. Offensive rebounds 9.6. Defensive rebounds 28.2. Total rebounds 37.8. That was a huge issue for them last year, especially when they went to New York, especially when they played Boston and Milwaukee on the road. They just don't rebound well against some of those teams, but they've gotten a lot better this season, I think. Not a lot better. They've gotten better. They've made steps. they've taken some strides at getting better defensively and also rebounding. And I think turnovers too. We'll get to that. 29.6 assists, 13.2 turnovers. They had 5.4 steals, 4.8 blocks, and they were a minus 7.1 on the road last year in the NBA playoffs. So when you look at those numbers and you think about the struggles that the Pacers have had, a lot of what they struggled with last year, a lot of what they've struggled with still is their while some say that they have some experience and that they should be learning from these experiences, there's still a youngish team where they're still having some learning curves and processes that they have to go through, where they're trying to figure out how to sustain that same kind of energy on the road. And this is something that maybe is a concern as we leave to go to Milwaukee, and thinking about like the struggles that the Pacers have in games that they've lost this year. My biggest concern for the Pacers, and this will be part of the keys of the game, is just the way they start games and tend to let teams back into games that they shouldn't. Those are really two things that you can't really do in games anyway, but like, especially on the road in the playoffs, like you cannot let teams start quick and you start slow when you're on the road, and you cannot let teams get back into it if you somehow take a lead in the games that are on the road. So those are things that I worry with the Pacers, just because they've had a tendency to kind of let those things happen in regular season games against teams that aren't very good, but also in the playoffs, they've not really proven yet. Like, this is the one thing they've really not proven yet, that they can go in and really compete on the road against some of these top teams in the Eastern Conference. So I'm interested, because this doesn't end a stretch of really competitive games that they'll have. Like I said, like I mentioned, I think, if they advance past the Bucks, they'll get the Cavs more than likely, unless the Heat somehow pull off the upset, which I doubt. But playing in Cleveland is extremely difficult. And then should they win that series, there's a good chance they're playing New York or Boston again. And that's in the Eastern Conference Finals. Both of those places are very, very difficult to win in, buildings to win in. I just, I find it concerning for the Pacers because while they did exactly what they wanted to get a first round home playoff series, because Cleveland was so good, I think shockingly good, and because the Knicks got a nice cushion to get away from the Pacers for, I think at the end of the season, the Pacers were trying to there's points where they could have probably chased down the Knicks if they had performed in certain games where they could have made it interesting. But then you also have that second round matchup with Boston that was looming. Did you want to take on the Cavs, who are not as battle tested as, say, the Knicks or Boston? And I think the Pacers like their chances against Cleveland better anyway. But this is something that the Pacers have to get through. This is something they've got to grow through. They've got to learn how to win the game on the road in a tough environment, especially now that they've got a 2-0 lead. Like this is kind of perfect storm for the Bucks. If I'm the Bucks, I'm a Bucks fan. This next game is one I feel like we have to win it. Like I know a lot of these are must win at this point for the Bucks because they're down 2-0, but I feel like this is the game that you really could capture the momentum back to get back to 2-2, to force it to be then a 3-game series. And while you're still not favored because the Pacers will have 2 home games left for game 5 and game 7, like you still have to. I still feel like if you win this game, you could put a lot of pressure on the Pacers. And because the Pacers' tendencies are to kind of relax too much when they feel like they've got an advantage, that's another thing the Pacers tend to do this, that they've done against teams this is why they've always been challenged by teams that are like the likes of the Wizards or the Raptors or, some of the weaker teams in the Western Conference. This is kind of a perfect scenario if you're a Bucks fan. If you look at what the Pacers have done in the past, this is the game. So that was it from last season that I really wanted to bring up, and just some of the concerns I have with this Pacer team, and maybe not concerns, maybe like this is the next challenge for them. This is the one thing in 2024, 2025 NBA playoffs that I'd really like to see. And it's really tough to win an NBA title, and I've got the Pacers going to the Eastern Conference Finals and losing to Boston in my predictions. But the more and more that we've played, and Boston now starting to deal with some injury problems with Jaylen Brown, with a Jason Tatum, with maybe not so much of a healthy roster, I feel like the Pacers might actually have some of the most vulnerable East that we've seen in quite some time, where I do feel like the Pacers, my prediction might change depending on just what the Celtics look like over the next couple of games, because I do feel like they're much more vulnerable than they've ever been. And I do feel that the Knicks are too. And I'm not really convinced or sold on the Celtics, the Cavs. Sorry, my cat is, if you're not on the YouTube version, you're missing out. My cat is going absolutely crazy right now. I don't know what's happening, but she's very excited about game 3. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you really look at the things that the Pacers have to do. This is the next thing. This is the next step, right? You've got to get past this inability to really challenge teams on the road. And I know a lot of teams aren't great on the road in the playoffs. You get one. You got to get one. That's what they always say. But I would like for them to be at least, a game or 2 under 500 by the time they leave this playoff series, or by the time they leave this playoff series or next playoff series, get back to, their winning ways with this core of a team, because they're right now it's 2-7, because last year this was pretty much the same group. Can this team now, can they go win 1 or 2 games in Milwaukee, or go win 1 or 2 games in Cleveland, and kind of push it back towards, like, this group is right below or right at 500 on the road in the playoffs. That's a really good team, and I think a really tough challenge, and something I think that they can challenge themselves with in these playoffs going forward. And in the next playoffs, I think next season the ultimate goal will be to challenge for the top spot in the Eastern Conference. So that's it. That's my rundown of last season and some of the struggles that they might have as far as being a road team in the playoffs. And we'll talk a little bit more, because right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down Bucks and then Pacers, and then what I think will happen for game 3, some predictions. And we'll talk even more about some of the road things that happened this season as we look back on these teams, but it's very quick mention of something that they've done this past season for both these teams on the road and at home. So let's get into the Bucks. Rotations and changes from the Bucks, question mark, is what I have here in the notes. More Bobby Portis. So Bobby Portis, 28 points last game out against the Pacers in game 2. 28 points. He's a +1, 12 boards, 1 assist, went 11 from 19 from the field, 6 of 11 from 3. The guy didn't seem like he missed a 3 post that first half, right? I feel like he took over. He and Giannis pretty much took over that game in the second half and brought the Bucks within 2, which was way too close for comfort, but the Pacers end up going on an 8-2 run to finish that game out. But I do feel like when I say more Bobby, I'm thinking more Bobby Portis along the lines of, do they drop Brook Lopez from the starting lineup? Do they start Bobby Portis? Because Bobby Portis played starter minutes. He played 32 minutes yesterday. Because the way the rotations work in the playoffs, because you shrink a rotation, your sixth guy, if you really want to and choose to, one of your starters might not play starter minutes. So for instance, Taurean Prince played 19 minutes yesterday, and Brook Lopez played 16 minutes yesterday. So I wonder, and you were probably listening to this on Thursday, and I recorded this on Wednesday. I just feel that Bobby Portis is a more reliable option off the bench and the way that rotation works. Could I see that happening? Yes. But like, one thing that I've heard Bucks fans say is like, man, Doc needs to change the rotations. But then their solution to changing that rotation ends up being, well, we're going to remove everybody that we feel is not contributing in starter level role. And a lot of times they're like, before yesterday, before Kuzma had 12 points and actually played somewhat serviceable basketball and wasn't a liability out there, like people were like, let's remove Prince, Kuzma, and Brook from the lineup. We'll put in Portis, Gary Trent, and Kevin Porter or AJ Green. So here's my thing is NBA coaches are, I think, some to their detriment. I think they're very stubborn because they feel like, no, what I'm doing is right and I'm going to prove it. So there's that aspect of it. There's an ego to it. Doc especially. And Doc has not really been successful since he left Boston when he had that really good team with Boston with Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, Rajon Rondo. Since then, I mean, he's been kind of a disaster. But he'll be always marked as a legendary coach because of how good the Celtics had always been when he was there. But that was more to do with personnel. Now that he's got to do more coaching and adjusting and adjustments, you're starting to see a very average basketball coach. And I think it has been, part of the reason why the Clippers weren't good back then when they had all that talent was because of Doc Rivers. And now you look at him with Milwaukee and he's not having success and he's not changing anything. Like if you go from game 1 to game 2, there's not much that really changed. I mean, they insert Dame into the lineup. They take out Ryan Rollins. Ryan Rollins doesn't play at all. And Ryan Rollins did a pretty decent job on Tyrese guarding him. And they had no answer for Tyrese in this game. And I don't think Tyrese has had a really good game yet. Like he's had a good game, but not a really good typical, hits half his threes, Tyrese Halliburton. Like he's not had that explosive offensive game yet, but he's been great setting his guys up. So you look at what Doc has done or hasn't done or lack thereof, but you also have to look at, and this is what else I've noticed from Bucks podcast is that whenever they say these things, like Doc needs to adjust. But I mean, a lot of that's personnel. Look at their personnel. It's not great. It's Taurean Prince, it's Kyle Kuzma, it's Brook Lopez, it's Bobby Portis, Jericho Sims, Gary Trent Jr., Porter Jr., AJ Green. That's it. And Ryan Rollins is pretty much just, disappeared from Doc's mind. So you're leaving it up to guys that weren't reliable role players in the first place. Very hit and miss. Kevin Porter Jr. has never really proven that he can play in the playoffs. Gary Trent Jr. has been pretty much a non-factor, especially in game 2. Jericho Sims is a good defensive replacement, but he's not going to do anything to add offensively. Bobby Bobby Portis, I don't think he has 20 points a game. I don't think he starts averaging 28 a game. Because if he does, then yeah, the Pacers would be in trouble. And then the other thing you got to think of too is you think about all these things, and you have to realize that sometimes two-star players just don't work together. And I'm starting to think that Giannis and Dame are good in-season players, and they can win ball games. But I'm not sure that when push comes to shove that they're necessarily a great fit together. Dame is such a ball dominant guard and comes off screens to shoot, and he dribbles into his shot a lot. So he's always got the ball in his hands. But so does Giannis. And you don't ever really see Giannis and Damian Lillard playing a two-man game too much, like the pick and roll sometimes. But I think the Pacers kind of figured out what to do on some of those. They jump the screen before the screen gets there. So they're forcing Giannis or Dame to just start to take off because here comes the defender. They've already switched the defense or defending assignments. And now, you got Pascal guarding Dame and Nembhard on Giannis or whatever it might be. But then after that, they've done such a good job by jumping the screen. They're still, 35 feet from the basket. The Pacers can recover. So it's not like they play well off of each other. They're no Miles Turner and Tyrese Halliburton good. I mean, those two are, you put those two together, it's crazy. And I know Miles isn't like the big offensive threat, but in the pick and roll, he and Tyrese are one of the best in the NBA. And Giannis and Dame aren't even that close. But I mean, look at that volume. 33 shots together, and the Bucks took 87. And I would say Dame was more hesitant than normal. And I would even say Giannis didn't take as many as I thought he would. He was trying to be more of a distributor, but he's not great at that. He's good, but not great. So who do you go to? Like if you're, and the Bucks fans keep saying, well, AJ Green. Well, I mean, has AJ Green ever really, shown that he can do this on a consistent basis for, a 7-game stretch where he would become the focal point of what the Pacers are trying to defend? So let's just say that's what you do, right? Let's say you put in what do they call him? The Larry or Jerry Bird. That's what they call him, which is funny. But you put AJ Green in, okay? Let's just say you take out Taurean Prince. Like Kyle Kuzma's not striking the fear of God into any Pacer player. So I would assume how that matchup would go is maybe you insert AJ Green for Taurean Prince, right? So let's say straight swap for swap. Doc does that. You're going to have Andrew Nembhard on Lillard. You'll take Tyrese on AJ Green, who I think he's perfectly fine guarding. Tyrese is not a good defender, but for a guy that's a spot and stop him or spot up shooter, he's not going anywhere. Like he's not going to, take you off the dribble or do anything crazy like that. And if he tries, then good luck to him. So, okay, well, maybe you leave Taurean Prince out there. Maybe for some reason you're like, you know what? Let's take out Kuzma, swap for swap. Kuzma's a much better scorer, and I think way better defensively. And then they talk about, well, okay, we're going to take Brook out, put Bobby in, and Taurean Prince and AJ Green. At least that looks better. And Bobby Portis is much more of an offensive threat. And maybe that's the lineup you go with. But then think about this, right? That's a great, I think, group because you have shooters surrounding Giannis and you've got energy, you've got rebounding, you've got defense, you've got a pretty good lineup there. If you swap Prince and Lopez for Portis and Green or Portis and Trent or Portis and Porter, I guess. But you take two of those guys off the bench and put them in the rotation and you move the weaker ones like Taurean Prince and Brook Lopez to the bench. Those minutes eventually are going to catch up to them. Like it's not like you're hiding them. It's not like you're taking them completely out of rotations. They got to play sometime. So then you're relying on your bench being Taurean Prince, Brook Lopez, Jericho Sims, and a mixture of whoever you want, depending on who you put in the starting. Like that just doesn't seem like there's so much weakness in the depth of the Milwaukee Bucks. Like it's so hard to. I love that seems to keep being the answer for the Bucks fans. When ultimately all you need to say, Bucks fans, is that our depth stinks, and we're pretty much 7 guys deep. 8, depending on how Kevin Porter's Jr. Torian Prince is playing. And if Brook Lopez is even playable at this point, because he's not proven he is. I don't. So, just some interesting stats for the Bucks perspective, right? So, talking about some of these lineups, let's try to clarify it some. So, the best lineup that the Bucks have deployed in this series, and it's only been one game because it includes Damian Lillard. So let's go through these, right? So here's lineup number 1. They have a +4. Right? A +4 is it's okay. But you're not going to win many games with a +4. But that lineup includes Damian Lillard, Giannis, Bobby Portis, Gary Trent, and AJ Green, which is a really solid rotation, I think. Defensively, not so much, but offensively, yeah. But they've only deployed that 1 minute, which is, that's a lineup that I think could work, but they've only played it 1 minute. So Doc only has trusted that for 1 minute. They scored 7 points. They shot 75% from the field. Okay, here's a lineup that has played 7.2 minutes, so not much more. But they've scored 18 at least. So this is a pretty good one. This is the one that I think, without Giannis and without Dame, which they've done a couple times, this is the one they'll go to. And it's been pretty decent. But I think this is the one that also does not include Pascal Siakam, Tyrese Halliburton, Miles Turner, Nembhard, and Nesmith. It's when the Pacers go full bench, Bucks go full bench. So this is that full Bucks bench lineup, which is better than the Pacers full bench lineup at times, because Bobby Portis, I think, is better than any bench player that the Pacers have right now, at least playing, wise. I think Bobby Portis is on a heater. But this is a +3, and it is Bobby Portis, Gary Trent Jr., Kevin Porter Jr., Jericho Sims, and AJ Green. But you're not going to see that lineup. Like, I feel like you're done seeing that lineup. So let's knock that one out. So the first two, right? Out of the first two, I'd definitely start that other one, but it's only been deployed for a minute and 0.4 second, or 0.4. What is that? A minute? Probably like a minute and 15 seconds is when that rotation of Lillard, Giannis, Bobby Portis, Gary Trent, and AJ played. So I'm looking at it, right, and I'm thinking, okay, which one probably is the best lineup they have? Like, Logan, which lineup has been the most effective for the Bucks against the Pacers? And there's one that I think works very well, and it's this next one. So this is maybe what you start if Doc somehow makes the lineup change. This is the one that I think works for them the best, to give them the best shot. And this is the one that should play a lot of minutes together. It's Damian Lillard, Giannis, Bobby Portis, Kyle Kuzma, and Gary Trent. I think that's the best lineup that Doc will put out there and trust. Because I just don't think he trusts AJ Green. He's a defensive liability. If he does hit a couple threes, that's nice. But there's times where he doesn't. And the Pacers have been okay not allowing him to go crazy. But yeah, I like that lineup for the Bucks. Damian, Giannis, Bobby, Kyle, and Gary. Because in the one game that they played together, they played 12 minutes, right over 12 minutes together. So a fourth of the game. They scored 30 points in those 12 minutes. They shoot 61%. From three, they're a 54% shooting unit or lineup together. They're not a great free throw shooting bunch, but that's mostly because Giannis, I think. Rebounding, 8 rebounds. That's solid. 8 assists. That's real solid. Turnovers, they do turn the ball over, but with those guys, you'd expect that. And their plus minus is a 2 in this series. But again, they've played one game together. But that I think is their best lineup, because then you start to look at like what other lineups have been deployed with a lot of minutes and have had success. The next one that I can see is a lineup that includes Giannis, Bobby, Gary, Kevin Porter, and AJ Green, which is another lineup I think that if Doc trusted, he would put out there more. And I think he does to a degree, but I think when push comes to shove, AJ Green's the one that loses out, because AJ Green just can't defend anybody. Like, he's a horrible matchup for everybody on that floor when he's trying to guard one of the Pacers. So the Pacers just exploit him every time. And he usually, it's funny, he usually ends up on either like Neesmith or Pascal, or he's picked and he ends up on Tyrese. So it's like, he just ends up in a really bad spot all the time. So I think that's why Doc doesn't play him as much and trusts that other lineup a little bit more and plays them a little bit more, because I think it adds more defensively and offensively. But you're going to see this rotation too, which I feel like that's a much better lineup. But every other lineup, man, it's bad. Like, let me read you the Brook Lopez ones. So Brook Lopez, so this is one of them. Brook Lopez, Damian Lillard, Giannis, Taurean Prince, and Kyle Kuzma. So this is their starting lineup. Their starting lineup is a -9. 16 minutes played together. 37 points. Field goals made 13, attempted 26. So they do shoot efficient. They're efficient. But that's mostly because they're keeping Taurean from shooting, and Kyle's been better. But 4 of 10 from the 3-point line, 40%. It's a really good clip. Giannis shot better yesterday from the free throw line, so their free throw percentage is kind of skewed to 100%, because he was like 4 for 4 when that group was together. But then after that, he'd missed his normal amount. But they, 10 assists, 10 boards, like, pretty solid until you get to they just don't defend. And Brook Lopez he's just unplayable at this point. And I'm not going to read the other one because Ryan Rollins, I didn't realize it was Ryan Rollins attached to it. That's when it was the starting lineup with Ryan Rollins, which is really bad, which was expected. I mean, it was a negative 15. That was awful. They went away from that real quick. But yeah, there's not much hope if I'm reading that as a Bucks fan, right? Like, and I hope that all made sense. I tried to slow it down some there, because that can get confusing when I'm naming all these names and numbers and wait, what? It's hard to follow. But ultimately, to say your best lineups of your Doc Rivers, if you're going to make the changes, include Bobby Portis, Giannis, Damian Lillard, and a mixture of Kuzma, AJ Green, and Gary. Because even Kevin Porter is a kind of a liability in the way that he turns the ball over a ton. He shoots a lot. He's got a high volume. He takes the ball on the dribble a ton. He doesn't really move the basketball. He doesn't really move the needle. And he makes some really stupid mistakes. Like yesterday when he grabbed Thomas Bryant's shoe. Flagrant foul. Pacers get 2 free throws, and they've got 2 of the best free throw shooters in the league in Neesmith and Mathurin. And then Tyrese, if he needed to take them. So you got 3 of the best free throw shooters, and you're just giving them free throws. So yeah, what do you do as Doc? And I love that discussion from Bucks fans, and I love that like for like swap. And I know Dame is rusty, and that's part of the reason why they had success against Dame yesterday. What the other named Andrew Nemhard, especially in the second half. But if I'm Doc Rivers, there's not many options out there, and none of them I think that are better than, because again, when you look at the best players in this series, at least from performances in the past, and maybe not so much of it here, because you right now you could probably throw Bobby Portis in there just because he went off, but eliminate that fact. I still think on paper the Pacers have 4 of the best 5 players in this series. and the Bucks have, I guess, with healthy Dame would be in there somewhere, but non-healthy Dame, he's not better than Neesmith or Nemhard when he's not healthy and he's rusty. And game 3 will be a real test to see what Dame looks like, because if Rusty Dame is is here to stay for at least this series, which is very likely. I think the benefit is that they do have a lot of games in between, but the likelihood of Dame becoming prime Dame again during this playoff series is slim to none, just because he's missed a whole month. It takes guys weeks to get back ramped up to where you feel like you're in your prime. Because if you watch that game 2 yesterday again, he just kind of just floated around, didn't really do much. So, yeah, I think that's the issue that Doc has. Because I think the game plan's worked, just not in the first quarter. But the game plan's it's worked when you found rotations at work. I still think the Pacers are good enough to figure it out, but I think the games could be closer than they've been. Because I think the way that the Bucks are able to slow down the Pacers, I think they're much better than a lot of teams at being able to slow the Pacers down. But yeah, I don't know what you do if you're Doc Rivers. You get new players. That's what you need to do. All right. Production from guys not my whole setup, my cat's knocking me out. Sorry, if you're on the video, you just went for a wild ride. My cat is going crazy. 1 second. All right. Yeah. Sorry about that. Audio listeners probably, what's going on? My cat knocked my camera over as I was trying to record this. I think the zone is the best thing that you can do, and hope it works against the Pacers, especially that bench unit. That bench unit, I would throw a zone until they figured out that they can beat it consistently, because I just feel like there's times where that Pacers bench unit kind of gets shaky and makes me nervous. The bench unit and then the bench unit plus Pascal, I'm just not a big fan of it, just because the ball sticks too much. Let's talk a little bit home court advantage. I know we've already talked about this with the Pacers versus the Bucks, but over the season, the Bucks were 27-14 at home this year, unbeaten at home in April, 4 wins, averaging 129.8 per game, 56 field goal percentage, and a wild 45.5% from 3. So they've been really good in the last month at home, but the Bucks have been really good the last month. So without Dame, they've been playing pretty well. But I just feel like the focus of the playoffs and teams, you're not playing teams that are that bad in the playoffs, obviously. And then factor in the fact that like you have a whole week in which you're preparing for one team. And then you have 3 days in between each of these games to prepare. Rick Carlisle's a much better coach than Doc Rivers. So you're getting that aspect of it. And I think Rick is underrated. I think Rick is one of the best coaches as far as adjustments are concerned, because there's been so many games where the Pacers come out in the second half and just look totally different. So that's great. Let's go to the Pacers side of it. Adjusting to the Bucks adjustments. That's really it for game 3. Because when you win games in the playoffs, it becomes more about like, all right, let's tinker with some things that didn't go well, but like we don't want to change too much, right? But then it seems like the other team, they're like, oh man, sky's falling. We got to change something. A lot of things. So that tends to be when you see the adjustments. Something that I think the Pacers need to do when they visit the Bucks, they've got to stay tight on 3-point shooters. You can't let Gary Trent or Bobby Portis or Brook Lopez or Dame, you can't let them just get easy shots from the perimeter. This is where I think the Pacers are going to have a big challenge ahead of them, because teams that light them up from 3 typically do really well against the Pacers. And because Giannis has gotten better at distributing the ball. He's not great, but he's gotten better. He becomes dangerous and more dangerous. And then you add in that factor of people always shoot better at home. So you take those increases in percentages up. So that makes guys like obviously Portis Jr. very dangerous. Gary Trent, AJ Green. I wouldn't say Kuzma because he's just been bad. But Dame, I think Dame will score 20 easy. And this next one. So you just got to prepare for that. I don't think Bobby Portis hits 28 though. I don't see a world in which Bobby Portis averages 28 points a game. I'm thinking he's more around a 10 to 15 guy. And then game 1 he was not good. And he hasn't been as sharp. And he kind of fades at times. Bobby Portis is one of those guys that like could go on a heater for 2 games, and then game 4 is when he'll just fall apart and then get kicked out in game 5. Like that's the kind of person he is. He's so volatile. He gets that's the other thing too, is like, while I think the Pacers kind of egg him on and he does better because they egg him on, there's also aspects of like sometimes he gets a little too hyped up into it and then he starts to struggle. So there's that balance, and he's never been one to really find it. And remember, he got thrown out last year. So he's always waiting to pop. It's just a matter if the Pacers can pop him. So Nimhell. Welcome to Nimhell, Dame. Yeah. I mean, Damian Lillard, although rusty, only went 4 of 13, 2 of 8 from deep. Missed a free throw. Didn't usually do that. And had 7 assists. So Nimhard bothers him. And I think that's the thing too with Dame is guys like Andrew really bother him because Andrew doesn't really react until you push him enough. And he's chirpy and chippy enough where he gets under your skin. But if you just watch Andrew play, Drew just shoves him. Next time you're watching this particular play where he's getting screened, Damian is getting screened up at the top, about 35 feet from the basket. Usually Giannis is the one setting it, or Brooke or Bobby. Watch him and then there's time where Dame's trying to get to one of the hash marks to where he can start the offense, and you'll just see it's just so slight, but Nimhard he shoves him a little, and it's never going to be called a foul, but he gives him like a light contact just to bounce him enough to where I think it's annoying. Nimhard's always there. And then that's so annoying as a person who's trying to create an offense or score when that guy is just always there. He's always touching you. He's always pushing on you. He's physical. He's strong. I think he's stronger than Dame. If I had to put them in a battle, I think he's stronger or at least more physical than Dame is. And I think because Dame doesn't understand playing that type of defense, it makes it even more frustrating when somebody plays that type of defense on him. So I do think Andrew gives him problems. Now, I think where Dame has an advantage, Drew tends to get overzealous on some of those closeouts or when he's trying to fight through a screen over the top. And Dame does that thing where he, just like Jalen Brunson does, where he stops. And because Andrew's trying to fight through it physically, he's just got too much momentum and it carries him into Dame, who's launching a 3. So that's one adjustment maybe. Because you can't get Nemhard in foul trouble because then that usually gets Neesmith in foul trouble. It seems to be a domino effect with those two because they end up guarding each other's guys when they go down. I think that, there needs to be a focus on hedging those screens and hedging that guy coming off the screen, where I think Miles could be better at, or Pascal usually could be better at least showing enough to where you're forcing Dame to go at least a step further out or backwards. And if Dame pulls up from 25 feet, 30 feet, so be it. But I do feel like that they could avoid those moments where Drew runs over a screen and into the shooter, because he does that quite a bit. And Dame knows that. And I think he remembered, actually. It was weird. I think Dame had kind of maybe forgotten a little bit about Nemhard fighting through those screens, but then he did it and he was like, ooh, that's right. He does do that quite a bit. So another thing too, on the road, the Pacers have had struggles keeping the ball, keeping possession, no turnovers. But I mean, they've become so efficient, and Tyrese has become so historic in the way that he doesn't turn the ball over. That could be a huge advantage for the Pacers going forward, and especially on the road in the playoffs. If you don't turn the ball over in the playoffs on the road, you have a really good chance to win. Rick versus Doc. This is again where I think it's fun to mention that for at least Pacer fans, it's fun to mention Doc Rivers is, I mean, adverse to taking any risk and making big changes. And I was listening to his press conference at the end of the game, and Brooke Lopez and Bobby Portis and all them. I was listening to all of them talk because that's what I usually do. And then I'll do some Bucks podcasts. So I was listening to, I think it was Locked on Bucks or the Euro Step, one of those. And they were talking about the fact that like Doc had mentioned that changes were coming. Oh, this was Locked On, I think. And he said that changes were coming. But they were like, "Ooh, see, that means changes of the lineup are coming." And while I think it's possible that one of those guys drops from that starting rotation, I just don't think it's going to be like a massive overhaul because you just don't do that in the playoffs. You don't ever do that. And even in the regular season, you don't just make a complete overhaul of the team when you're competitive. It just doesn't make sense. So this whole thing where they keep saying, "Oh, there's going to be big changes. He needs to make big changes to the rotation. He needs to at least take out 2 of them, maybe 3 of them." Imagine what that would do to the chemistry of the team, even though they've been playing together and oftentimes get minutes together anyway. It just changes things. They don't know, they're not starting the game typically. They don't, that. And it also requires them to play against guys that they typically aren't playing in those other rotations. So for instance, you throw AJ Green in there and you throw maybe Porter Jr. or Trent Jr. Like if you throw them in there, they're playing against the likes of Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Nesmith, Tyrese Halliburton. So that exposes a whole different can of worms. I just it opens a whole different can of worms. Like you're going to tell me that AJ Green can guard somebody out there. You're going to tell me that Gary Trent is going to be consistent enough to carry you, and then won't be around for those bench minutes where he might be needed. But the bench is going to rely heavily now on Taurean Prince because he's now part of that rotation. Like guys get tired. It's not a like for it's baffling to me just how many times people will discuss rotations and that it's just as easy as snapping your finger and swapping them out and it should work. It doesn't do that. We're not linear. Basketball is not linear. It is multidimensional. Zone and setting the pace. Make sure you don't get caught up in that zone, but the Pacers seem to have figured it out. There's so many options that they're running at it. Pacers on the road, what they need to do is set the pace, right? They do this on the home court very well, but on the road they tend to slow down. They play to the other team's strengths at times on the road, and that's frustrating as a fan. And I think that's their next period of growth where they need to be better at, as they get older. Just play your game. Force it, right? Force your hand. Force your pace on them. I just feel like sometimes they can do it and they just rely heavily on dribbling the ball and trying to get isolation. And that's just not their game. ISO is not what the Pacers do well. So I think that's important. Pacers on the road stats, 20-20 on the road this season, so not good. I mean, decent. You stayed at 500, but could have been better. Top teams in the Eastern Conference are better than that on the road. 115.9 points per game on the road this year, 12.8 turnovers per game. They shot 47.9% from the field on the road this season and a 35.5% three-point percentage. A 98 pace on the road, so good for 98 points per 48 possessions, which is not what they typically will have on any part of the season. But I mean, that's kind of the pace they've been playing at this series. The Bucks really slowed them down. They were at 100. I think it was 100 even game 1. It was like 98 game 2. So this is fitting right in the zone of where they've been playing this series. So maybe that's a benefit because I guess they're used to playing that pace. But I think the Bucks will be at a much better pace than the Pacers. And then another thing I had on here was where have they grown from last year? Like two losses, or sorry, 2 wins on the road and 7 losses in 9 games. Like where that needs to be better this season. If you want to talk about contending for the Eastern Conference Finals again, that needs to improve. And if you don't want to do a gentleman's sweep in the Eastern Conference, you're going to have to beat Bucks, Pistons, Knicks in a hostile environment. And you'll have to definitely do it against the Cavs because the Cavs are a very good team. So that's kind of been my breakdown of what to expect as far as from each team. I don't think Rick does anything rotationally. I think you might see a little less Thomas Bryant on the road. I think you might see a little bit more of Jarris Walker, but that's just a guess. The only reason I say that, I feel like Jarris is going to get the ball moving more, and the Pacers tend to slow down on the road, and he moves it more effectively. I'd love to see an Obi Toppin game here soon. I'm getting kind of worried because he's been good. He's been okay, but he's not been the Obi Toppin that we've had the last couple of months. Now, TJ's been great. I feel like TJ's been really good in the playoffs. He's done a lot of good things in the postseason this year, which is great. But you need somebody else. We need Obi in double digits. We need Jarris 6-7 points because you have got Ben, and I think Ben's going to get 11 to 14 each night. So, and that's the other thing too. It's like we've been really excited. We've not really talked about a whole lot, but I'd love to see more from Ben. I'd love to see a 20-point effort. I'd love to see a Bobby Portis type performance from Ben. And maybe this is when he does it. You're comfortable at home, but when you go to a hostile environment, I feel like this is where Ben can be a thorn, just an absolute problem. Because I just feel like he's got that edge. He loves to chirp. He loves to get physical. He loves to get into the mess. So I feel like this is a good series for him. And I feel like this is a really good game for him. Prediction time. I've been going back and forth just because I'm able to talk myself into certain things and talk myself out of certain things. I just, where I think things could go wrong, they slow down tremendously. And they just don't have enough to compete with what Damian does. And Portis has a good game and feeds off of what he did in game 2 and averages, he goes for like 18 to 20. Dame goes for 20 to 25. Giannis goes for 30 or 40. That could be problems. And I think they have that ability, especially that first game back home at least. Like game 4 seems a little bit more like the game that the Pacers have a better chance in. Whereas I feel like this one's going to be a real fight, game 3, because the Bucks have been embarrassed. And they usually respond pretty well. And if Giannis goes for 40, they're basically unbeatable, which is wild that, 36 beatable, but 40, that's when they're hard to beat. So what could go wrong? Yeah, I think the pace, I think turning the ball over uncharacteristically. There we go. So we'll see. I think that's what could go wrong. The pace and the bench. That could go very wrong. The bench has not been good in the regular season, and I think could struggle on the road. Like the road is a very difficult place to play, and benches can implode. So I could see that. Keys to the game. Tyrese Halliburton. That's pretty dumb to say, but getting Tyrese started early because he's done that in the last 2 games. 7 points game. Game 2 started with 7. Didn't shoot well in game 1 or 2. Shot better in game 2, but I think is due for 3 or 4 threes. So that will help tremendously. But I'd say Tyrese and Miles. Miles is always an X factor just because when he scores, the Pacers are just so difficult to beat because it adds a whole different layer that you have to worry about. it opens up that top of that key, and he's such a good passer out of that position. And he makes Tyrese more dangerous when he's hitting threes. It just unlocks so many things for the Pacers. And then Benedict Mathurin, that'd be X factor number 3 if I'm going to do 3 guys to focus on, because Pascal's going to do his thing. Andrew's going to do his thing. Neesmith, solid as rock. Toppin, I could go with Toppin. He'd kind of be a wild card, though. McConnell will perform. He likes those kind of environments. But Ben, come on, man. Give me 20. That'd be great. Love a good Ben Mathurin 20-point dagger. I think that's it. I think that's going to do it for this pre. It's right at an hour, so I'm doing better with these. I'm going to try to separate them because it's been harder to do 2 hours for a podcast, and luckily we've got some games in between here. Oh, I did want to update. So Friday night's the game. I won't be able to do a recap of game 3 until Sunday morning. So on Sunday morning, I'm thinking I'm going to go live, see what happens, see if somebody joins. If not, it'll be up as a regular podcast by Sunday afternoon. So you can listen to a recap of game 3, and then I'll just do a quick preview for game 4 on that same live. So that way we're ready to go and the episode's up, and gives you enough time to listen before game 4, which is at 9:30 on Sunday Eastern time. So at least that'll give you some time to listen to the episode and a recap and then preview. So it might be a longer episode again on Sunday. So I'll probably go for like 90 minutes on Sunday morning-ish. I'm going to shoot for Sunday at 10 a.m. I'll shoot for Sunday at 10 a.m., go live, talk about Pacers Bucks, game 3, preview game 4, and then I'll be back Monday to recap. Yeah. I'll do probably a Monday recap or a Sunday night late recap of game 4, so that there's an episode for Monday. I'll probably do late night on Sunday because I do trivia on Monday. So cool. All right. Well, if you're looking for our podcast, we are on YouTube, the Pacers Fever Show over on YouTube. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to drop a like or a subscribe if it's on YouTube, a comment as well. It helps people find the podcast. But also, I want to hear from you. What do you think are some of the keys for game 3, Bucks, Pacers? What are some things that could go wrong for the Pacers? What would you do if you're listening to this and you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan for some reason? What would you do with the rotation? And Pacer fans, what are some of the things that you would do to help these Pacers get some road wins? What are some things that they can do to really improve their chances of winning basketball games in hostile territory during these playoffs? Because they're going to need them if they're going to contend. So what are some things? Drop those comments in the YouTube. Leave a rating over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Helps people find the show, but it also puts us near the top for Pacer Podcast. And if you're not listening to other Pacer podcasts, I highly recommend. Caitlin Cooper does a great podcast with Sam over there where she writes. I think Basketball She Wrote is what it's called. I subscribe to the newsletter. I should know the name. You also got Setting the Pace, Alex and Facci. Tony East does Locked On Pacers, but you're probably already listening to all these people, and I'm just rambling on about people I have a way better podcast. But I've enjoyed this so far. It's been a lot of fun. Got some really great listens so far, so I'm really happy with that, and I hope to grow this. Remember, we're also a Indiana Fever podcast, so we will be ramping up as the preseason is getting ready to start. I know they play. It's on Sunday in Iowa, but because of Pacers basketball, playoff basketball, we'll probably start some episodes next week on the Fever, just kind of getting some off-season stuff out of the way as their season starts to ramp up and preseason starts to get some games under its belt. We'll talk about Indiana Fever as well. And if you are interested in joining this podcast as a host for the Pacer portion of this, or if you want to join the Fever portion of this, I am looking for a co-host. The more the merrier. I need some people to talk with me. about this because it keeps me on track. I can hydrate, and I'm more focused on what I'm saying, and I can actually do some quick research should I need it during the podcast without having to pause it. So, yeah, I'd really appreciate anybody reaching out to me on Twitter or Facebook if you want to join the show as a full-time co-host. We'd really appreciate anybody that would reach out to want to talk Pacers or Fever basketball. But yeah, you can find us on socials, the Pacers Fever Show over on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we look forward to talking with you all on X during the game. Our live tweet, we will be talking about what is going on Game 3 over there in Milwaukee. So we will see you on Friday night. We need the Pacers to get that third win. And I think if they get that third win in Game 3, I think it's all but over for the Bucks, and the Pacers can take care of business either in Game 4 or Game 5 and move on to the next round. But they played some really good basketball. I'm really excited about what's been going on with the Pacers. They look really good so far. So let's keep this train going. I will see you guys on Sunday when we're recapping Game 3 from Milwaukee. We're not going to be in Milwaukee, but the result and previewing Game 4 as the Pacers look to close out the Bucks in this series.